So over to you, Fiona. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome, and thank you very much to this community, because innovation matters, startups matters, they're crucial to our economy. So it's super to be talking to you today. I'm going to share a presentation, a PowerPoint. It's a bit fast and furious, that is my style. There'll be an opportunity for Q&A at the end, but if you want to ask a question, just type in and Siobhan will have a look at the questions and she'll let me know at Q&A. And Siobhan, if you want to interrupt me, you know, just sort of wave and just stop me mid-flight. I'm one of these presenters who loves a bit of heckling, so you don't need to worry about that. But I'm going to talk to you about the 7 reasons why being on a board yourself is good for you, your company or your startup, also the community at large. So it's really planting seeds. Some of you will be listening today thinking, is this woman mad? Does she know anything about my life? Does she really think I've got time to be a school governor on a hospice board or a public appointment board? That's okay. Listen to what I'm saying and think about where you might want to be in 5 years' time, because this seed will germinate or it will slowly die a death, because being on a board might not be for you. So that's fine. I'll also briefly talk to you, and we can explore this in Q&A, a little bit more about startup boards and advisory boards, and when you yourself might want to use one, but I'll cover that later. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Siobhan, if you can wave, if you can see it effectively here. Good. So 7 reasons. If you want to join a board, and just to be clear, you are never too young to be on a board. There is a board out there for everyone, 15-year-olds included, and I'm going to prove that point with a video later when you will hear Alison Rose, who's currently the Chief Exec of NatWest, talk about the boards that she's been on, actually before the age of 40, and her first board, she was 15 years old. I nearly fell off my chair. But there's university boards, club boards. So there's a board out there for everyone, and you're never too old to be on a board. You're also never too male to be on a board, because I get a lot of men saying it's not fair now, it's all about women, it's all about minorities. That's not true. It is now very competitive to sell your board value add, and it's very difficult to sell how you're going to add value on a board if you don't stand out from the crowd, hence my first picture and image, because boards today, rightly so, are doing skills audits. What do we need? And we don't need everyone to have the same point of view and think in the same way. And therefore, once you've done a skills audit, boards are increasingly competitively advertising roles. Now, headhunters are often rarely used because boards are still using their networks a little bit. So understanding how to sell your board value add is crucial in many, many ways. And that's what my organisation, Women on Boards UK, specialises in. And for any men on the call, just be aware we help a lot of men and we work with a lot of corporates, and I'll show you that later. So that's me. My background is asset management. I used to run a global equity desk in the city. And honestly, I thought I knew everything about the boardroom because I was buying and selling shares and I was meeting chief execs and chairs. Not true. It wasn't until I became a board member and I was personally responsible for what went on in that boardroom, the dynamics changes and is very, very different. So I have been on lots of different boards, including a startup board. I'm actually not on the board. I'm on their remuneration committee, nominations committee, a company called Hanks, which is a condom manufacturing, it's not a manufacturing company, they're making condoms. So, you know, who would have thought I would have ever been on a condom board, but there you go, it's a startup. Now, this is our website, womenonboards.net. If you're interested and inspired, we have a discount code for you later, which we'll share with you. But just register as a free member. Think about whether you want to pay to get access to our vacancies, one-on-one support and the CV course later. So do think about registering regardless of whether you're immediately interested, because then you'll be part of this community. We have 2 sites. We have an Australian site and a UK site. So if you're based in Europe, join the UK site. So that's what we look like there. Now, what makes us unique and what we do is many, many things. We currently, just for your amusement, have about 350 board positions on our website that are looking for board members today. And I'll show you our vacancy board later. And we have about 50 new ones every week. Now, we know where the boards that are transparently advertising for board members, we know where they are, and we grab them and put them in one place for you to find. Now, lots of people join us formally for that. Actually, as exciting as that is, most boards don't transparently advertise, so it's only a decimal place as to the available boards seats in society and in the community today. So what really makes us unique is our style and the way we support you with connections at the point you have an interview. Because if you go for an interview for a board position, it's very different from an interview for an executive position. And we need to make sure that you really demonstrate and come across like a non-executive director that is overseeing and not doing. And therefore it is our network of connections. And we have about 38,000 members, not all of which are paid members, but we have a vast Rolodex of board members across the United Kingdom and in Europe, actually globally as well, that we can connect you for a crucial morale boosting chat. Now, remember, most boards don't advertise, and therefore existing board members are asking their mates, friends and family and their connections. And it also means when you're asked to join a board, you probably know more about that board than somebody coming in cold. And what we're trying to do is to make sure you don't come across as cold, you come across as very knowledgeable and confident, because being on a board is really largely about common sense. And we'll talk about that later. We work with loads of corporates who want their employees to be ambitious and think about joining their own boards. But they also recognize that if you go on an external board where you're floating at the top of the company, it's a bit like a mini MBA, a master's in business that you're not paying for. You're often going to get paid to be on these boards. So it can be really, really rewarding because you learn so much, and I'll come on to that later, but just thought you might be interested. Our newest member is Oxford University. Now, what you might realise is Oxford University, along with many other universities, are spinning out startup companies. And that means that they own a percentage of these startups, including the group that was doing the AstraZeneca jab. And they have some of their executives and professors on those boards, and they want to make sure they know what they're doing and understand that you're there to look after the company and its long-term survivability, and not necessarily just Oxford University's stake. It's slightly different. So we're working with them, which is terribly exciting. Now, the career benefits of being on the boards, we've got lots of success stories, and I mentioned You're Never Too Young. We've advertised 20,000 board positions. We have over 3,000 success stories, and crucially people that we don't know that we're helping at the last minute. And Rosie and Gemma, we met through one of our corporates at Oracle, and we inspired them to think about the boardroom. And what is interesting, if you look at people who get to the top of organizations, public sector organizations, private sector organizations, listed companies, many of them have been on a board, a community board, before the age of 28. And I said this to Rosie and Gemma when I met them, and they were both about 27 and a half. They couldn't believe it. They'd never thought about it, because they'd never come across the boardroom as part of their family history, their background. And they both broke themselves, one on a school governing board and one on a local charity. So it really, really makes a difference. And I'll explain to you why in my 7 reasons coming up. So why join a board? It is choice. And some of you listening today might actually really benefit from creating your own board and having support to help you run your business. You might want to think about an advisory board, which is different from being on a board, because when you're on a board as a trustee, governor, or non-executive director, you are registered at Companies House. You are formally accountable for what goes on in that organization. And being on an advisory board is a bit different. Now, there are 2 types of board directors. There's registered executive directors, those paid employees, usually get 1 or 2. And then there's the non-executive directors, which again is slightly different. So I'm very much here today talking about non-executive directors and advisory boards, which are slightly different from being a registered director and executive. And many of you I know have started businesses or are thinking of starting businesses. Some of you may have got funding recently from one of the government Innovate channels, which is fantastic. And you might be thinking about starting your own board. So you would be a company director as a founder, which again, slightly different. So 7 reasons why being on a board is good for you, your company and society. I'm not going to read these out because I've got a slide on each one of them. But the first one is a point of difference on your CV. So reason 1, just to give you a flavour, meet Avni Mashri. Now, we met Avni at PwC, who's one of our corporate members. She is a chartered accountant before she was a partner at PwC. Now, if you want to make partner, and not everyone does, but if you want to make partner, it is a competitive process where your name is put in the potential partnership box, and then you're interviewed, you might get some coaching, and it's really competitive, and probably only 10% of the people in that pot actually get to partner at PwC, and they might have another go and another go. Now, Avni came to one of our Get On Board workshops, which I'll mention to you later and explain to you what we do in those workshops. She'd never thought about it. And she found the Girls' Day School Trust advertised on our vacancy board. And the key point is she was brave enough to apply. Now, she's not on the main board. They didn't have a space for her on the main board. Somebody else got the appointment, actually, but they asked her if she'd sit on the Audit and Finance Committee. So she's a committee member of the Girls' Day School Trust. Now, she believes that being on the board was the point of difference, the standout characteristic that enabled her to make partnership. She also believed it changed the way she thought, not just thinking about her own business angle at PwC, but organisations in the round. And she was able to demonstrate that in her partnership interview. So there's one reason for you. Reason 2, it allows you to develop your career and leadership skills. Many of you may not have been managing a department, a team, or division. And if you're not a team head, you're not necessarily on top of a budget and the finances. And for some organizations, particularly if you're in a large organization, it can take time to get to that. If you're certainly in a startup, you're looking at cash day in, day out. Most of you will know that. But in this case, Angela Henderson, I think she was working at Deutsche Bank when we first met her. She was a sales executive on the desk. And she was working flexibly 4 days a week. She did have children. And she found and sensed that that was preventing her becoming a team leader. And that frustrated her. So we suggested she got involved in a local board, and she got involved in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital as one of the governors. So not in the main board, there's several layers, but we can go on to that later. And she's now on various charity boards within Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. And that to her was a career game changer. I don't think she knew how good she was at governance, risk and oversight because she'd never done it until she got involved in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. And subsequently from that, she's now what we describe a portfolio non-executive director. She's given up her day job and she has various paid board positions, one of which is Credit Suisse Asset Management. So for her, it enabled her to jump actually several layers above where her career was going. It created an opportunity because she was ambitious and she didn't know what she knew about HR policies, for example. It wasn't her day job until she got outside her organization. So it can really enrich you as an individual. Reason 3, it helps you build up market knowledge, possibly in a different industry, and industry knowledge. So this is me. I joined the board of Fight for Sight, which is a medical research charity. Now, I joined it because of my investment expertise, and they have a large pot of money. They're giving out grants, and somebody has to manage that pot. And we don't give out the grant straight away, all of it. We give it out in parcels. So there's a cash management oversight job to be done in Fight for Sight. So that was my role. But actually, I learned so much by sitting next to eye surgeons. Fascinating listening to their perspective. I also didn't have a background in marketing and branding, because that wasn't my area of expertise. But I sat on the marketing and fundraising committee and watched and observed an advertising agency coming in to rebrand the charity. So for me, it enriched me. My board meetings actually all happened in the evening. So I only had to go to 4 board meetings a year. I was on one committee, so I was on those board, and I popped into the marketing committee from time to time, all in the evening. And honestly, no matter how tired I was, and I was really tired some days, you know, pulling my little trolley in London with my workbooks and stuff, I really enjoyed it when I got there. So for me, I learned something new, and I didn't realize my knowledge of Twitter, for example. It was funny, you don't know where you're going to be an expert. I was certainly expert in the boardroom on digital marketing. Who would have thought? But that said something about the age of that particular board and their style, so something else. Now, reason 4, it enables you to get engaged in your community at a leadership level. So Karen Finlayson was at PwC in Leeds, actually, and Karen decided she wanted to get involved with Doncaster College Board, and that's because she didn't go to university, and she went to Doncaster College, and she found they were in financial difficulty, and it worried her. So she stepped up. And interestingly, her employer, PwC, said, you can't do that as a conflict of interest, or there could be. And she said, there's no conflict. We don't audit it. I'm not worried about the fact that it's in financial difficulty. I'm there to support and rescue it. But for her, it was a game changer, because if the company hadn't let her do that, she would have probably left PwC. And they kept her because they allowed her to do that. But she did something great in her community by turning around that college. And she's now on multiple boards in the region. So that might be something that you care about, your community, something you're passionate about that you can't do in your day job. Reason 5. Resilience. Are you frustrated? We met Debbie February at Wessex Water in Bath. She was frustrated. In her company, there was no room to get to the top, because I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with the executive team, but I describe them as sort of very, very happy in their position. And there's not much turnover in the company. Now, she didn't want to leave. Bath's a lovely place, and Wessex is a fantastic employer. So she got involved in her local school to make her feel better. So that's reason 5. Reason 6, and very briefly, reason 7, before I talk to you about the role of the board and what you do need to know, those nuggets of support and information. Continuity if you take a career break. Andrew Finn took a career break in Scotland when he had children. And he went on to the mother and baby toddler group. So very, very rewarding for him. And it allowed him to keep his CV together and create opportunities for career development later on in his life. And he's now on multiple boards and has been involved with a few startup situations as well. So that's reason 7. And finally, before we talk about what do boards do, to give you a bit of further inspiration and how we can help you, is if you join a board now, it gives you a chance to see whether you like it, to understand your value add, because maybe as you move closer to retirement, or you want to have a flexible hybrid role in life, you can think about that later on in life. And if you don't do something about it now, or when you can, it's going to be much harder for you to join boards later on, because it's a competitive environment now. So that if you've had board experience before, it's easier for you to get on a board or to a higher level of board, and it will take you longer if you leave it too late. So the earlier you start, the better. So that's a little bit about that. I'm now going to talk to you about what we do and how we can support you, and a little bit about what are your duties, responsibilities, and liabilities. Now, if you want to, and you want our help, then join our organisation. I'll talk to you about that, because we go into a lot of detail, because you do need to be effective at communicating your board value add. But what's crucial is to know that you're all different. Some of you are starting up a company and you'll want to set up a board yourself, and you'll either have non-executive directors supporting you, and those executives, you might not have HR knowledge, you might not have operations knowledge, you might not have digital knowledge, and you might need that guidance and oversight in the boardroom, or you might want to set up an advisory board. But you'll all be different. You've all got different expertise, and some of you have had experience and some of you won't. So you're all unique, really, really unique, and you need to be confident that you have something to add, and for sure you all do. So how do you realise your board potential? Now, we've got a workshop called Get On Board. We do it monthly. We're actually just about to roll out a clouds course that I'm working on for people to join digitally. But if you want to join a board, what we cover in this workshop is about directorship, your role, duties, responsibilities, and liabilities. You are liable if anything goes wrong. Now, the law is not out to get you. It's out to get you if you're fraudulent and you don't understand the importance of your job. Companies go into liquidation and get into difficulty all of the time. I wouldn't say nobody's worried about that, but that there might be a few questions asked that really worried if there's fraud going on, because if you're getting close to insolvency, your duties as a director change from the company to actually your creditors. And there's a few things that you need to note, but it's a serious job. So you need to know what you do, a little bit about the Companies Act. You need to know who the regulators are. And that's one of the things that we go into a lot of detail for. I say a lot of detail. We're not a corporate governance course. So we're not the Institute of Directors. We can get you discounts there actually. But a lot of this governance you can read on the book. In a book, and most people learn on the job. What's crucial is you understand the basics, and what we do is try and keep it simple at the helicopter level, because you need to know what you know and what you don't know, and be confident about what you don't know, and that you know where to get that information, or it's covered around the table. We'll also talk to you about what does a trustee really do, that torturous environment of collective decisions, because in the boardroom you share the decision making, you share the responsibility, and that environment of people and who chairs it and the agenda and how it works, how much time you spend on the governance issues versus the strategic strategy of the company and signing off that. And I'll show you a slide on that later. We cover headhunters. A lot of people get very excited about headhunters and think they need to know them all. Most boards don't use headhunters. Most boards don't advertise still today. So unless you're going for very competitive public appointments or listed companies or large private companies, headhunters are just not involved. So there's a time for headhunters, and we've actually got hours little webinar course on understanding how to build that relationship with headhunters, who the headhunters are, for those of you that need it. We touched it in the workshop. Now, the next thing that we do in this workshop, and I'll show you some of the slides on this, is show you the whole landscape of opportunities. There are thousands and thousands of boards. So after this little lunchtime event, every organisation you see, from your local sports club, your community centre, the hospice, a charity, almost every building and organisation you see has a board of some sort. So really start opening your eyes. Prison boards, doctors' clinical commissioning boards, hospital boards, university boards, and even those boards, they have multiple boards within. So really start looking and then think about what interests you. Because your passion matters. And then doing yourself justice, one of the things that we can help you with is writing a board CV. If you're applying for a position, not only do you need a strong covering letter explaining how you fit their skills brief and audit, the next thing you need to do is also send your CV. And your CV should not be the same as your executive CV. You're making life enormously difficult for the recruiter if you send them the executive CV. So we've got a course in the cloud for our full members at no extra charge, and we covered a little bit in that workshop. So that's if you're interested. But let's have a look at the role of the board. So just simply, these are a few slides from that workshop. If you join a board, you're governing on behalf of someone or somebody. And it's very important you know who they are. So it could be shareholders in the case of a private company. Who are the owners? Could be listed shareholders in the case of a listed organisation. Members in the case of CBI or a membership body. Lots of sports clubs are members organisations. Employees, you have a duty to who you employ, and there's all sorts of rules and regulations, so you need to look after your employees, and if we don't know that post-COVID, you never will. Customers and public. And public, of course, comes into the environment as well, a big topic at the moment. And then there's the regulator. So there's various regulators, and we make sure you know who they are. There's a pensions regulator. If you're on a pensions board, pensions have boards. And there's a regulator for universities, so that's the offices for students. And again, all of this, they tend to have what I describe as idiot's guides as to your roles and responsibilities if you sit on one of these boards. So again, don't let that lack of knowledge stop you. But the buck does stop in the boardroom. Now, Our organisation specialises in keeping it simple, and the role of a board is really quite simple. Boards actually only do two things: performance, strategy and stargazing, and signing off the executive's strategy, possibly signing off funding. Conformance, which is basically abiding by the law. So it could be health and safety regulations, it's filing your accounts. Compliance and risk if you're a financial services, but compliance related to cyber rules, GDPR, general data protection regulation, all of those things. And boards either spend a lot of time on conformance. Certainly big listed boards are very heavy that way. Startup boards will be more performance. Because the beauty of you having a few advisory board members or board members from a startup perspective is they will help you with the operational side of conformance to make sure you don't miss something. Because lots of startups fail, not necessarily because they don't have the right strategy, because they haven't got their HR policies right and they've been sued by an employee. So there's a few things that you can do to protect, and you're not always going to have the knowledge you need. And that's where these advisors or board members come in. So you're either one or the other. So if I did a poll, and we can do that at sort of Q&A shortly, is I would ask you, where do you think you'll add more value? Because when you're presenting yourself to a board member or you're looking at a brief of what a board member is looking for, you need to know whether you're more performance or conformance. So this is there's a lot involved in being on a board. I'm not going to go into all of this, and what we specialize in simplifying it. And these are some of these things, and insolvency I've mentioned is key, but the board is front and central of everything, responsible for all these stakeholders which are around the middle. What are boards looking for? You. They're looking for you. They're looking for your sector knowledge, your experience. Have you been involved in fundraising? Your community reputation, and that could be the name of the company you work for, and if you've had board and committee experience. So if you're working for a company at the moment, you might be involved in a startup and an Innovate idea. See if you can get involved in committees within your company and get that proxy board experience if you haven't had it. It's absolutely crucial. You need a good CV. I've mentioned that. Come to us for support on that. We've got a CV course in the cloud. This is an example of a CV, just for your interest. This is Felicity First. She never had a board position. We made her up, by the way. That's why she called Felicity First. She has a strong summary in the round, but we already know, looking at what these bullet points here, that she's more performance than conformance. She's marketing, she's brand, she's strategy. She's not in this CV talking about a day job. She's talking about her committee experience. Her day job will be towards the end. So we've got lots of sample CVs for you. So my point really is, you now know where to go to get some help. You're all different. Some of you are just starting out. Some of you are building a portfolio career. Some of you are starting companies and are thinking about it from your own board's perspective. We've got lots of members who are established board directors, so we do lots of director circles for them on things like board evaluations, environment, cyber risk. So we do other things than just help you sell yourself onto the boards. We support you as well. And anybody who's a full member, as I say, gets access to that CV course. Now, I promised you to show you the opportunities. We talk about the third sector, the public sector, and the private sector. Now, a lot of you have had funding from indirectly through the government, through one of their non-departmental public bodies. These catapults, these Innovate UK companies, and there's lots of those. UK Sport England is a non-departmental public body. HMRC is a government department. They have a board. There's lots of boards out there. Housing associations. I bet you know housing association, private boards, loads of stuff. We have a vacancy board, so if you want our help, and we do charge for access to our vacancy board, then you get the CV course, but the crucial thing we give you is one-on-one support at the point of interview. But we have hundreds of them, 50 new ones a week, and here are just a few. So Eco Hydro was a startup company. It was a hand sanitize company, and it started before COVID, and you can imagine they went gangbusters when COVID came in, and they needed to scale up fast. They were wholesale in distribution, and they needed new board members, so we helped them find, I think it was 4 board members. And if you'd clicked on EcoHydro, this is what they said. They tell you about the organisation. They tell you the selection criteria. What are they looking for? Here we go, international contacts, because they were scaling up overseas. So, you know, you won't fit every brief just because you like the organisation, but getting an insight into what's available and around is always important. And then, because we're a support organisation, we have a superb resource centre. We have a getting board ready, writing applications, how to apply, what do boards do. We also have a boardroom in the boardroom section, which is boardroom insights and staying match fit. And Martin Webster is actually just retiring, but he's a lawyer from Pinsent Mason. So he does a one-pager for us every month on what legal things are changing and what boards need to be aware of. So it's not just about being on a board, it's enriching your brain and staying up to date. Paul Drescher is the ex-president of CBI. He helps run our chairs course. Are you stepping up to chairing an organisation? And Sue O'Brien is one of our headhunters. So lots of support out there. And we've got a discount offer, which I'll show you later if any of you are interested. But we have basic membership, which gets you access to our resource centre and access to some of our events. It's free. So if you're even vaguely amused, register for free, hover around for years if you like, we're not bothered, we'll help you regardless. It's £195 because we are running this organisation full-time with 8 full-time staff, 8 part-time staff and loads of guest presenters. So we do have to charge to survive. But £195 gives you access to those CVs, crucially that one-on-one support, no extra charge, and that CV course. And also we have events. I don't want to run events just for the event's sake, and I'll show you those later, but the events are about financial literacy and introducing you to board members and boards from different sectors, and they're free for full members. Premium member just includes that get on board workshop, but there's a discount code for you if you're interested. It's WII. Oh, there's a mistake there, I can see it's 2021, it's not 2011. It's not 11 at the end, it's 2021, and that will be sent out to you later, and that is a capital I. So if you are interested, we can give you 20% off, and that's been negotiated, but you just have to fill in the discount code at the point of checkout. These are the events that we do. We do networking for NEDs, director circles, but I don't really want to go into much of that. What I want to do is go on to questions and answers, but first, I want to play you a video. Now, it's possible, because of bandwidth, the video might come across, but you should be able to hear it unless you're dialing in. I want to show you this video. It's a 1-minute video of Alison Rose, who's the Chief Exec of NatWest, RBS as rebranded. And I asked her, and you already know the answer, she was 15. I asked her if she'd ever been on any boards and how old she was. There is a really good reason why Alison is different and why she's the chief exec of RBS, but her answer blew me away. And the other thing Alison talks about is empty chairs. Are there any empty chairs in your organisation where you can get proxy board experience and exposure? And she talks about that, but it's very, very brief, but I think it's very powerful. So I'm going to play it to you now. But if you don't see it moving, don't worry, you should be able to hear it.
I was a lifeguard when I was 15 when I came back to the UK, and I joined the board of the Lifeguard Trust that was down on the south coast of England. So that was the first one. When I went to university, I was on the debating society. I chaired the hockey club board. I worked for the local hospice and set up a charity fundraising for that. And then when I came out of university, I was at Cox rowing on the river, competing competitively, and then I joined the board of the rowing club and got involved with that. And then I've joined different campaigns raising money for cancer research. I've joined a couple of school boards to help out at different points. So I've done a few things like that. But I think it's really simple. Join the local rugby club, the local cricket club, the school, the Treasury Committee, anything like that, because I think what's really important is demystifying the whole experience. We set up a program called Empty Chairs on all of our executive committees, where we had an empty chair and we invited young female talent to join the board. Peter has done this here at Coots to amazing effect. And it's demystifying what goes on in the boardroom, because I know when I started, I used to think there were all these terribly clever, smart people doing these amazing, magical things. Really not. It's everything that you do day to day, and it's not that different. So the more experience you get like that, they realize you can do everything.
So sorry if you couldn't see that move, but I hope you could hear it. I think that's inspirational. You can do everything. I mean, opportunity and luck plays a part in life, but I love this picture as well. It is your life. It is your choice. Boards aren't for everyone, but give it a go. At least know about it and know we're here to support you. And for any men in the audience, I know we're called Women on Boards, but there's nothing gender specific about the boardroom. There's nothing gender specific about what we do. And we're genuinely open to all. And we help a lot of men, particularly coming to us via the corporate. So it is just a question of planting the seed today and getting involved, and then thinking about your own boards and how you might survive, be more robust and more successful if you set up a board or an advisory board. So question time now, and I'm really just going to stop sharing. So I like to see people and questions. Have you got any questions coming in, or shall I randomly pick on a few people?
No, we've got some questions. So let me just pull some up, and do feel free to unmute yourselves and jump in with your questions if you want to ask them directly. But I'll jump in with Angela. She's asked, she's commented, I've just been offered my first board job. They are just getting started. What is the expectations for a first meeting?
Angela, it's a really important question, because people evaluate you very quickly from that meeting and they judge you. So the first thing I would do is, I don't know whether it's live or virtual. I suspect it's going to be virtual, Angela. I can see you. It's virtual? So hopefully you've been onboarded. Hopefully the chair has given you some information, a little bit about the organisation, and hopefully they will introduce you to the board. I say hopefully because my first board meeting at Fireside, the chairman forgot to introduce me and it was very uncomfortable. So if that happens, do write in the chat box straight away, or maybe before the board meeting, will he introduce you at the start? And then you can just say, really lovely to be here. I am just going to observe at the first board meeting. So you're giving your permission to be silent, because it's going to take you about a year to know what the heck's going on. I don't know whether you know the people and the personalities. It's going to take you a while. Assume you're good enough. Confidence is king, and just give yourself permission to shut up. Because if you start talking all of the time because you want to make an impact, everyone will go, oh, blooming heck, who the frig is she? Why did she get on the board? And you will feel so much better if you just make a policy and a statement to start off with. Now, I know we've said that to people in the past, and if there is something, read the board pack. It may be you're observing the first meeting anyway, but read the board pack. There might be 10 things that you've got something to say. Choose one and focus on one of them, on what's most important. So hold your voice back, because you will be so annoying. And if there's something in the board pack that, particularly finance, that you're not sure about, speak to the finance director before and say, I'd love to chat and a few questions. Don't annoy everyone in the meeting just because you don't understand. Now, it's amazing. The great thing about new people coming on boards is they often ask the question that everybody else wanted to ask. So don't let it stop you asking a question, but good luck. And I'm thrilled for you. Do scribble in what the board is. Link in with me afterwards and tell me that. So, and let me know. I get a lot of links in, so anybody can link in with me, but just say you met me today. It makes my life a lot easier. But super, and congratulations.
We've still got loads of questions coming in. Katerina, am I pronouncing that correctly? I apologize if I'm not. Has said, if you are part of a committee but not a member of the board, on the charity board, are you legally responsible? What are the risks to be on an audit committee of a charity?
You will know if you're on the hook, because you'll be a registered director. So if you are, one of the things that we cover in our Getting Started workshop is to make sure that you understand when you are a registered director and when you're not. Now, you do have to be careful attending board meetings. A committee is different, because if you attend board meetings, you're not a registered director. Should anything go wrong, the law actually can come after you, and yet you're not insured. All the other board directors will have an insurance policy that will protect them from vexatious litigation. You will not be protected, because the law can decide that, Katerina, you were actually contributing so much, you are called a de facto board director, even though you're not registered. Now, at the committee level, all you're doing, it's a bit like being on an advisory board. You are seeing some board packs, you're probably up to some confidentialities, but the person who's chairing that committee is normally the person on the main board, and they'll say, you know, we've done a bit of work, we flexed it, my committee have thought about it, these are the issues, and these are our conclusions. But you're not making the final decision, because it's going up to the main board meeting. And when you're on a board at Fight for Sight, our committee's papers went to the main board, and our conclusions and the minutes to our paper, so that main board could see everything, and they could ask questions if they want to. Hopefully that helps. I can see Jessica's got her hand up, but yes, pile in with the other questions.
Jessica, if you want to jump in with a question, that is fantastic, and we'll come back to the ones in the chat.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having this session. It's been very helpful and timely. In the last 2 months, I was approached for free interviews. So it was Keele University, it was Lincoln University, and it was the British Science Association. And initially I pushed back because I'm 27, so I didn't really understand why they were approaching me. I do have a bit of STEM experience, having run a charity and done some work for a few government bodies, but I didn't think that I was old enough to do board work, if I'm honest. They pushed that I had the initial conversations, and I had a CV spin up and cover letter, and did the interviews, and none of them came back with not positive results, but it was a no for all three. And I just wanted to know, you know, what the best next steps are, because now I've been exposed to it. I kind of want to carry on trying, but I'm not sure if it's that I'm inexperienced or I haven't done the right prep or interview, etc.
I'm just going to, because in a minute I'm going to show my vacancy board. Okay, so what I suspect it was, they would have had a headhunter. Keele University would have had a headhunter. A British Science Association probably had a headhunter. Who was reaching out to you? Was it a headhunter?
It was 2 separate firms. It was 2 headhunting firms. Yeah.
Okay. So what, to a certain extent, they're reaching out and they're trying to show diverse candidates. So they're making an effort, and lots of people sound fed up of, you know, being, you know, second choice, second list. I get there, I get on the long list, I never get on the short list. So you're relying on them to present you. So I don't know the extent to which age doesn't matter as long as you can contribute. So lots of people want younger people, ex-students on boards, that type of thing. Theatres do. So as long as you understand how to contribute. But this is, I'm just going to share with you now our website, because I've just gone on to it. You're better to actually have a look at what's out there, because at the moment you're passively waiting for them to come in. So Shwayne, put your thumb up if you can see this. I've just gone onto our website. These are the vacancies on our vacancy board. So the Royal National College of the Blind. Now these people pay for it to be up at the Royal Lotting Association. So, you know, not to want to point, this is the ranges out there, and you're just waiting for somebody to knock on and choose for you what they wish. British Council, Hearing Dogs for the Deaf, Financial Reporting Council, Page 5, you know, there's 300 of them. So for a lot, UK athletics, you know, you might be an ex-Olympian as far as I'm aware, I don't know. And you can now click on that and say, what are they looking for? You can see the role, you can see the selection criteria. So that's what we are doing, a window shop for you to really find something that you're passionate about and you care about. And therefore you are going to be so keen and you're going to market yourself better. So we do these morale boosting chats prior to the interview, and I say to them, you know, Paul, you've just got for a selection, that's fantastic. Tell me how you're going to add value to the board. What do you know about this company? And I wait to see what they're going to say. And many of them just don't pass muster in terms of understanding, are they at the performance aspect, adding value on that board, or in the conformance aspect? So Jessica, if I was talking to you, I'd want to know, are you a chartered accountant? Are you a governance expert? Are you a strategist? Are you a fundraiser? Are you an ex-student? Because if you're an ex-student, you'll be student engagement, all that sort of stuff. I don't know. You might work for Google. That would be an interesting, a challenge, the new digital startups. So there's lots of things in it, but I would say be more proactive, and make sure you can sell yourself properly, because you can say to the headhunter, am I just ticking your boxes? Am I a serious candidate?
Yeah.
But I would start owning it, as opposed to waiting for three or four to show you. There's 300 for you to look at today, right now, if you're interested. But you've got to want to do it.
And would we get does your organization offer the CV support beforehand, or would it be once we've applied for a role?
Basically, if I share this, once you're a full member, you get access to our board vacancies. If you go to our shop products, you've got the CV support. Now, our CV course is free for all full members. So once you've paid £195 for access to that one-on-one support, the CV support in shop products, here it is, Build a Board online CV course. If you click on that, then you will get that it's a modular course, and it's how to build a CV. But what I would recommend is that you come on a Get On Board workshop, because if I said to you, who's the regulator for universities, would you know? Or for the British Science Association, would you know? Because I know the answer to those two questions.
No, I wouldn't know where to start.
So Keele University is the Office for Students. So the first thing you would do would go to the Office for Students website and look at the role of a university governor, and it will tell you. The other thing, if you're going for a public sector board, is you ought to know what the Nolan principles are, the principles of serving on a public board. Now, we've basically got one slide on that, to say, these are the answers to this question. And when somebody says to you, what do you know about the regulation of universities? You will say, well, obviously, I'm fully aware of the Office for Students, and standards and oversight are very important. But don't need to say anything else. Right, okay, right. Seems to know about that. If you then read every regulation and prove that you're worthy, you've just proved that you're not. You've proved you're insecure. Because you need to tell us everything, and you sound like a nightmare on the board. Another question coming in.
So yeah, we've got one from Helen. What is the difference between a board and an advisory board?
Okay, so if you, I used to be on the board of Spectral, which is a startup based in Edinburgh, which is related to gender pay gap reporting. And I therefore was a registered director. So I'm responsible with the rest of the board of filing the accounts. I'm responsible for overseeing GDPR, data protection, all that sort of stuff. And I realized that this particular board was going through another round of funding, and I didn't have the time that it required. It required much more time than I thought. So I stepped off the main board. I resigned, removed myself from Companies House. Now, I waited till we brought a new chief executive in, because I want to leave a board in a better shape than I found it. But they told me that it was going to be 4 board meetings a year. It ended up being 24 board meetings in a year, and I couldn't deal with it. And that was because of COVID and everything else, and a funding change and the law changing. So once I've got it into a good shape, I then stepped onto the advisory board. So that means they have an advisory board meeting a month. I can turn up or not turn up, but they can tap me for a bit of knowledge whenever they need it. So I'm an advisor. They can ignore me. I can't fire and hire the chief executive. I can't set their remuneration. I can't do loads of things because I'm not on their board. I'm not responsible. So I can't get sued. Now, clearly, I was on the board. So if anything happened during the time and there's an investigation over a period of 6 years, they could come after me and say, we're going to investigate what your role was at that time. And we'll go through that in the Getting on Board workshop. There's a fantastic get out of jail card free, which is I did everything you could reasonably expect me to do at the time. I turned up, I made an effort, and it was all minuted. And you're right, and in the best will in the world, you're all involved in the startup in innovation space. Companies go bust. Charities get into difficulty. Nobody's out there to get you. But the advisory board is a really nice way to start. And of course, if you're forming a CV and somebody says, you know, have you got board positions? Have you had board positions? Lots of people say no. And I say, hold on a second. You've got proxy knowledge because you were on this committee and this committee as an executive. You're on this advisory board, this advisory board. So you can imagine your CV is now who you are in the round, your board value add, performance or conformance, few words jump out the page, and then you list your advisory boards and your committee, your proxy board experience, so that nobody can say, well, we would have recruited Jessica. I'm picking on you, Jessica, because you said you've been, but you know, so-and-so had been on those advisory boards and really understands the dynamics of the boardroom, whereas we're not sure about so-and-so. And you can demonstrate that that's simply not true, and you do have that, but relying on a headhunter to present that's difficult. Best to have it on your CV and make it plain.
Thank you, Fiona. Then we've got a comment from Bianca, Director's Liability Insurance. Would you have a view on how soon after spinning out a university venture should you put that into place?
Immediately, right now. Never start a company without it. It is absolutely vital. You must have it. We take a lot of calls from and in fact, in our resource centre, in the reference materials, we've got reference information on insurance. Insurance is complex. But you must have insurance, and there are basic company liability and director liability insurance that, you know, so women on boards have got it. So we've got, I don't know off the top of my head, £3 million worth of cover. Should, you know, anybody die on the job and we suddenly get sued, it will not cover if I dip into the company's bank account, persuade the finance directors to sign it off, and I steal 100 grand. It won't cover that because that's fraud. So it protects you from litigation, and it doesn't matter whether you're on a school board or anything else. You need formal protection, and it covers your legal costs at that time, and covers any compensation that you might have to make, assuming you haven't done anything. But it's a complex thing. The Institute of Directors have got a page on it, but you should never, 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 even if it's a small charity, if the charities say to us it's not a good use of funds, you just look them in the face and say, well, it's not a good use of my time either. I'm personally liable. I'm not getting paid for this, because charities in general don't pay. It's not right. So you must have it straight away. Mustn't start a company without it on day one.
Thank you, Fiona. I know Felicity's got her hand up, so Felicity, if you want to come off mute.
Hi, thanks for today. It was a really great session. I've just realised I've still got my company background up instead of my home one, so
That's fine.
Now I had a question. So you mentioned, Fiona, about time commitment, because I was previously on a board, and I joined it just before sort of COVID hit, which was really bad timing because it was reason for the career break with having children. So then had young children, and you know, meetings that were meant to be quarterly they ended up being fortnightly, and it just got quite a time commitment. So I was wondering how, when these board vacancies are advertised, how much do they say, you know, sort of quarterly meetings, or how much of a time commitment?
So it's top board directors who are on multiple boards. When somebody says, are you interested in my board, they often don't even look at the company. They just say, can you tell me the board dates? Because most boards have planned their board meetings at least a year in advance, if not 2 years in advance. So don't even start a conversation if you know you can't make those times. And it's always a question of how long is a piece of string, because every board is a different type. So, and in my advisory boards, I'm on the advisory board of King's University for their Global Institute for Women. It's chaired by Julia Gillard, the ex-Australian Prime Minister. What is not to like? I love it. She's amazing. But I only have to attend 4 times a year. And I know the times, and they actually have 2 advisory meetings so you can jump. So it depends. If you're on a FTSE listed company, it's a meeting a month. Whenever you look at a board position, always remember you're going to be sitting on a committee. Sometimes they only advertise the board meetings, but the minute you're on it, you're then on a committee. So that's usually doubling it. Chair is something else altogether. So find out the information. Of course, I shouldn't say this, but shit happens, and COVID happened, and every organisation you know, got into that situation. So, you know, you always have to be available, you know, even if I'm on holiday, my EA, or I have my phone turned on. I block everything actually now when I'm on holiday, because it never ends with women on boards. I block everything except my EA, and then she can break through to get me, because if something happens, I've got a duty to this company. I can't just turn my radio off, but it just doesn't happen. So it depends, but there are loads of different types, and that's why I think our vacancy board is so interesting, and why so great that we have so many corporate members that realize it's almost free training for their staff. They're better employees when they've been on the board. So it's unfortunate, Felicity, what happened to you. It happened to a lot of people, but always take a look. I mean, my Fight for Sight, the board meetings were in the evening. And when people say they haven't got time, COVID, your situation was a bit different, because it ought to be a rare event. Mm-hmm. And due diligence is important before you join a meeting. Who's on the board? Finances, this is your reputation. And if you haven't got time for it, then don't do it. So yeah, I can't help you, but it varies enormously. But our job specs will tell you how many board meetings, and you should ask, and it's not an unreasonable question. You can also ask, because you're personally liable, if you could observe a board meeting. And some of our members observed board meetings and said, thank you very much, but no thank you. Or they've seen sample minutes that were appallingly written, because your minutes are your public record should anything go wrong. That's what the court will look at. And I actually have a notepad, but and I note every board meeting, and I make my own notes, and I always keep those notes. And in Fight for Sight, I've just shredded them. I keep them for 6 years, just in case.
No, they're really useful tips. Thank you. Really helpful. Thanks.
You're welcome. So, any more questions before we close, Shran?
So we've got a couple more, but I'll go for one of them and hope that we've got enough time to cover that. So Ama said, I'm now an executive director on the board of a startup that spun out from my research. We chose a chair and had lots of different executive directors and non-executive directors experience, and wants us to develop knowledge about legal responsibilities, etc. He did IOD courses over the years, which he highly recommends. Do you think IOD qualifications added a lot of benefit?
Do I think? The IOD course is superb, and so is the FT course. But the gentleman who's asked the question will know it costs a lot of money. So most people can't afford it. Off the top of my head, there's various modules of the course you can do. Each module is about £1,000, £750, and the whole course with the certificate, off the top of my head, is around it's between £5,000 and £7,500 range. So what we tend to find is most people who go on the courses, they love them. It's enriching. It's like a mini degree, really. You go through the takeover code, you go through the codes of best practice for an AIM company, a listed company. You meet directors, you listen to them. So imagine you're at university. It won't get you a board position. You'll learn a lot, and you'll be probably a better board director as a result of doing it. But most current board directors have never been on a course and have learnt on the job. So what we find is that minorities, women and men, often feel they need a certificate before they're ready. It's not true. And that's why our course, Get On Board, is different, because it's about who you are and how do you sell yourself. These are the basic bits of knowledge you go to, and then you can read it in a book. I can't go through all the ins and outs of the pensions regulation, but the IOD might. Probably didn't actually, because it's a bit quirky, the pensions, but on of those, so they are valuable. I did the INSEAD course, the International Directors Diploma. I mean, don't laugh, it was £19,000. Now, I got sponsored by the INSEAD because they wanted me to observe it, because I've observed all the courses, so I can give people advice. It was simply the best thing I've ever done in my life, and that was only 9 days for that. But I met the best lecturers in the world. I saw the best research. It will have made me a better board director, my knowledge. And they did case studies, role models, all sorts of different things. Fascinating. But again, doesn't help you get a board position. If you want a board position, you've got to constantly look. You've got to constantly tell people you're in for a board. You've got to put superb applications in, and rejections is part of the process. So we give telephone hugs, and that's why what we do in terms of that one-on-one support afterwards. And the beauty of being invited to come and talk to you today is, please know we're here for you. We can advertise those advisory board positions. We charge nothing. It's free to advertise on a website. We just want the information to get out there, because we're mass market, open to all, transparent to everyone, and bespoke at the point you really need us is when you've got that interview. Because if you've got that interview, you're already good enough. But you're not going to get that interview if your application is not strong enough, your CV is not strong enough. And when you've got it, let's try and get you over the line. I'm now on the Financial Reporting Council, which is one of the top regulator boards. I'm not on the main board, I'm an advisor. It's fantastic, great reputation. I haven't been asked to do anything yet, which is even better. But I'm there. So that I was rejected from my previous 3 interviews. I got down to the final 2. It's not personal, but I have to say I was gutted. I was really gutted. And when I found out who had got it, I realized why I didn't get it. That person had something that I didn't have. We both all had the right thing, but they had something. And in the last one I was particularly upset about, she was Japanese. You know, it was a Japanese investment trust. So she was me, but better. And they didn't have anybody who was Japanese on the fund. I mean, of course they went for her. But that's what's difficult. So the key, that's where we come in. But the courses are great, and if you can afford it and you can get your company to sponsor you, do it. And then we make lots of people who've done it, and then they want that support getting onto boards, that nurturing and that extra events. And the IID, we're a partner of the IID, so I think they're great.
Okay, I think that's everything that we've got time for today. Thank you so much, Fiona, for joining us and explaining the ins and outs of boards, why you should consider one, why it's going to be beneficial for your career, and why you should maybe think about setting up an advisory board if you are a startup as well. And yeah, lots of support and advice. Thank you so much, Fiona. And thank you to everybody that joined. We'll be circulating out the recording, and also we'll be circulating out the discount code as well to everybody.